So very, very high level, we're going to go over 3 different options for providing those virtual visits to your patients, to your customers here today. So high level, again, you've got essentially on the left there, first party Microsoft offerings, right? And within that, you've got bookings, which is a Microsoft provided service that lets your patients, your customers schedule their own appointments, and then links to Teams meeting links are generated and sent to them. Then you've got the EHR or EMR connector option, right? So if you have existing investments in an EHR, electronic health records platform, perhaps Epic, perhaps Cerner, then you might want to continue leveraging that, but utilize Teams for the virtual visits portion of that software. And then on the right here, you've got custom options. And that, of course, is a very broad topic. Historically, in the Microsoft world, you've had Azure Communication Services as one option. And then you've had Microsoft Graph. It's been possible to create a Teams meeting in Microsoft Graph for a long time, so we won't dig into that too much there today. But what I do want to highlight and call out, talk about a little bit near the end of my section here is our new virtual appointments API. So that is brand new. It just rolled out in public preview this, I think it was last month actually. So hot off the press, I'm excited to kind of share a little bit about what that is and how you can use that to build custom solutions yourself. All right, so let's start off with talking about bookings. Now, some of you may be familiar with bookings. Perhaps most of you, at least at a high level, might be familiar with that solution. But if you're not, just a quick overview. It essentially, as I said, allows you to create a public-facing web page that your patients or customers then use to self-schedule visits. You can also embed the bookings, URL for creating those visits in your own sort of scheduling service. Or you can just publish it directly as its own web page, right? We also do offer a bookings Teams app that lets a scheduler or the support staff themselves view all upcoming appointments as well as their status, schedule new meetings on a patient's behalf, send reminders to patients, things of that nature. In particular, one thing that I think is helpful and I usually try to call out is the ability to schedule meetings on a customer or patient's behalf. That can be super helpful if, for example, maybe a patient calls your office number and asks you to schedule a visit for them rather than going to, the bookings-based website to schedule their own visit. So it's kind of a, one-stop shop, very basic. Essentially, you can set it up yourself and provide your own, Teams telehealth visits to your patients. So I'll show you more of that bookings Teams app here shortly, but first I do want to demo the overall solution, and I'll start with the bookings service itself. So with that said, I will transition out of PowerPoint and into my web browser. Now, I am using a live demo environment here, so bear with me. Hopefully everything will go smoothly. The demo gods will smile upon me, but if not, I do apologize in advance. So as I said, just to start with, we'll look at the bookings website. If you're familiar with this already, I do apologize. We'll try to move kind of quick through this. So this is the bookings homepage. I'm logged in as an administrator. You can see I've got my bookings-based business already set up here. That is Healthcare Professionals Incorporated. So I'll click on that and you'll see here a bunch of different settings and options available to me as an administrator, right? So here's my calendar page so I can see, both of my staff members that I've assigned to this business, as well as their status. I can see, upcoming visits or other types of services that they're invited to that they're going to be providing on this business's behalf here. I also have a settings page for my bookings page itself. So if I want to configure this, I can do all of that here. For example, if I have, I don't know, a checkbox I want to make sure that my customers check in order to consent to data collection, or if I want to enter, terms of data collection, I can do that there. If I want to set default scheduling policy settings for this, perhaps I want, a minimum lead time of a day or 2 days, so users, our customers don't schedule our visits, too close to each other or without any sort of lead time or prep time. Same thing with maximum lead time, email notifications, all of that good stuff, right? You can also customize the page itself. You can change the look and feel of it, add coloring, themes, things of that nature here. And, last but not least, you've also got your time zone settings. So me being based out of the Eastern United States, I am in Eastern time. And so that's what I present to my customers on that bookings-based website. You'll also see if I go to the actual bookings page itself, that URL is presented to me here. So I'll load that in a new tab for us. This is what that customized page actually looks like. So I have 3 different offerings I'm providing through my service here. One is a virtual visits. I've set up 2 other visit types as well here. But just for demo purposes, we'll use our virtual visit as our example. So here you can see there's a little bit of information about this. There's a fee for providing this. This is the cost to my patient. Once I select that visit type, it also prompts me to select staff. That is, who do I want to actually meet with for this visit type? Now, this is optional, as you can see. It's not required, and it's also not something that you as the provider actually have to share. You can just make this automatically assign to someone who's providing support for this business. But in this case, I've elected to allow this. So as a patient, which is what I'm representing now, I can now select one of these 2 support personnel. So I'll choose Christy as my desired doctor to visit with me. And you can see now that I have a date picker as well as this time picker here on the right. So I'll go ahead and pick a time that works for me. And what you'll notice is that these options change, right? So on the 30th, I have a much smaller bank of options available to me than I do on the 31st. And so what that means is that the booking service is actually looking at, in this case, Christy Klein's calendar, and it's only showing options to me, the patient, that align with Christy's calendar. So if Christy has something on her calendar, whether it's another virtual visit or a private appointment, or she's blocked time on her calendar, it doesn't matter. It will not expose that block time to the patient. So you don't have to worry about setting any of that up yourself if you don't want. It's just all automatic, all built around Microsoft Exchange under the hood. So in this case, I'll just select a time that works for me on the 31st. Let's do, I don't know, 11:30, right? 11:30 a.m. sounds like a good time for a virtual appointment. I'll type in my name. Now, all the fields that you see here can be customized, added, removed. If you want to add more fields, you can do that. If you want to remove fields, you can do that as well. You can make them required, optional, whatever you like. I'll add my email. So there's my Microsoft email address, we'll just use for demo purposes. I can also add my phone number here. So I'll do that. Now, again, this is optional, and you'll notice that there is a disclaimer here that text message notifications are available, but only in the United States, Canada, and the UK. I know we have a lot of participants here that are not based out of those countries, so just be aware of that as a limitation. So all that really means, though, is that the reminder information to join the meeting and all that associated detail will be sent via email only, not through SMS texting notifications. So I'll go ahead and click on book here, and that will generate my appointments, and it will send me information associated with that appointment. So I'll get the time of the appointments, I will get a join link to the appointment, and so on, right? So while we're waiting for that to come through, just very briefly, I'll finish giving you the overview of the bookings page here. So we also have a customers tab, right? This shows us all of our historical customers that we have worked with. We can also add new customers into this sort of database, if you will. Our staffing page, so if I want to add new staff to provide services to this visit type, then I can do that here. So you can see we've got Christy, that's our cardiologist that I'll be meeting with here shortly, as well as all the different visits that Christy is providing. Services, this is where you add or remove the different service types. So here's my virtual visit, that's what I just registered for, as well as my other 2 appointment types. And again, you can add or remove these as you see fit, completely up to you. It's your business. You can also edit them. I won't go into really any detail about all of this because it's just a lot to go through. Suffice it to say that there's quite a bit of customization you can do on a per service basis, right? So if you want to provide a different type of service or charge a different amount for a virtual visit versus a different type of appointment, you can do that, right? All those options are available here. And then last but not least is business information. So pretty straightforward, right? I mean, it's the name of your business. If you have an address associated with your company, you'll add that there. Privacy policy information, if you have a business logo, right? Standard stuff, okay? So that's, again, very quickly an overview of the bookings settings, and we've already showed you what the registration page looks like. So now what I will do is I'll switch into the Teams application here. Now I'm logged in as Christy, so that's our cardiologist, right? And Christy has access to our bookings app inside the Teams client. So here you can see the bookings app available and open in the left rail. And you'll notice 2 things. One is a schedule view here, and one is a queue view, right? So first off, the schedule view, this shows the different appointments that are being handled by our different support staff for the particular day that is selected. In this case, Monday, August 29th, right? So here's Adele, our nurse practitioner, and here's Christy, our cardiologist. Looks like Christy has a couple appointments that she will be servicing today. You can also click on this new booking option. So again, as I said earlier, if you wanted to proactively or reactively schedule a meeting or a visit on behalf of one of your customers, one of your patients, this is how you would do it, right? So if someone happened to call your office number and ask you when your next available appointment was, this is a great way to check availability and then proactively send that visit to them on their behalf so they don't have to go take that action themselves. So here you can see, of course, you'd enter the patient name, ensure that they've consented to communication. This is where you'd add your staff, right? So those 2 staff that are supporting us here both show up. You can see availability, as we update this time, availability will show as available or not. So that way we don't, overbook someone. And then, critically, this is important. This have attendees join from a web browser option is, as you can see, it's new. And it's something that I always recommend my customers enable. Basically what this does is it ensures that the attendees, that's the patient here, join from a web browser rather than being prompted to download the Teams client. This is a really big pain point we've heard from all of our customers in the healthcare field for quite some time. And so what we've done is we've actually given you this option here that essentially gives a special link to the patient. So when they tap on that link from their email or from their text message, then it will launch them into that virtual visit inside a web browser. And that applies whether they're on a mobile device or on a desktop, PC. Either way, it will be delivered inside their browser rather than prompting them to download Teams or asking them to log into a Teams account. There's none of that. It's just a very simplified, easy to use web-based experience. All right, and so the other view you'll see here is the queue view. So I'll go ahead and switch this to, I guess it's the 30th, right? So on the 30th, we've got some appointments, right? And you'll notice a few things. First off, you can see the status of these appointments, right? So you can see here patient status, the visits completed, how long the visit took, as well as, visits that have yet to start. And you can also see who the patient is, as well as who the staff is supporting for that visit. You can also click the join button and that will join you directly into that virtual visit. So as you can imagine, this application, the Bookings app, could be used by either a scheduler, somebody who works maybe at the front desk, working on scheduling appointments, or it could also be used by, the actual provider themselves. They could use this to keep track of all of the appointments and then join themselves directly into it from here. So what I'll do now is I will go ahead and join Christy into this meeting. Before I do that, I want to join my mobile clients into a session. And I actually want to show you what this looks like. So I'll do my best to try to wrangle all this together for you. Let's see if I can get this set up. Oh, that is not quite looking how I wanted to. There we go. Okay, so this is my mobile phone, right? So as I mentioned, because I'm in the US, I get a text message with the direct join link to this meeting. So here you can see that's virtual visits link. As I said, there's also additional information, right? So confirmation, time for the event, that kind of thing, right? But what I want is this virtual visits link. So I'll go ahead and tap on that. And you'll notice that that loads me again into a web browser, right? So it doesn't prompt me to download Teams, it just asks me to enter my patient name. So I'll go ahead and type that in, Grayson Taylor, and I will check in. Okay, so what this will do is it will ask me if I'm okay with granting access to my microphone. I'll say, yep, I'm fine with that. Same thing with camera. And there you go. So you can now see my video and my microphone are on, and then it prompts me to join the waiting room. So I will tap join waiting room and that will check me into that visit. So I'm now in a Teams-like experience. You'll notice that it looks a lot like Teams, but again, it's all based in a web browser with, basically 2 steps required to join that link, right? Very simple, very straightforward on purpose, right? We wanted this to be as simple as possible for patients. So I'm waiting, right? So my provider hasn't yet joined my visit. So what I want to do now is I'll switch context again, and I'll go back to our provider's view here, and I'll just refresh this. Oh, I guess it already refreshed. So apologies, let me refresh it again. But you can actually see the status of the patient here. In this particular case, we know our patient is now waiting for us. So in our queue view for the 30th, we can see that the patient has been waiting for 1 minute. So that actually tells us the patient is already there. Maybe that's an appointment we should prioritize. Go ahead and join. So I'll click this join button. I'll allow my camera and my microphone. That normally would not show up if you were in a desktop PC. Of course, any sort of desktop Teams client, then you don't have to prompt for permissions. But We'll go ahead and join into this visit here, and you'll see our patient here is waiting in the lobby. So from there, we could admit them, participate in our session as we normally would, have our virtual consult, all again based through Teams. So you can see here again, the provider is able to use Teams as they normally would. So this is the Teams client, standard Teams meeting experience, but again, the patient's able to join using that mobile device. So I'll go ahead and cancel this. We don't need to go through the nuances of having a meeting in Teams. I think we're all familiar with that. I just wanted to show you what that joint experience looks like. Okay, so that out of the way, let's switch back into PowerPoint. Get that to pull up for me. And I want to go over the EHR connector now, right? So the EHR connector is kind of option 2, as I mentioned, for customers that still want to use a Microsoft-based service for telehealth visits, but perhaps bookings isn't appropriate for whatever reason. Maybe you've already made investments in, Epic or perhaps Cerner's EHR solutions, and your patients are using that for scheduling. They're familiar with that patient portal. You don't want to move away from that, of course, right? And so this solution actually uses a FHIR connector that seamlessly integrates and kind of connects Teams to the back end of that EHR, and then lets you utilize Teams provided virtual visits for all the telehealth appointments that users, patients then join from the familiarity of their patient portal, right? So just some key features to be aware of for this integration. There's 3 personas to kind of go through here. One is system admins. You do need a system administrator to actually set up the configuration of the EHR connector. It's not super difficult to do, but it does require some admin permissions to do that. So that's kind of step 1. And then from the patient's perspective, they're able to schedule and launch those visits from their patient portal. Again, very familiar experience. There's really no changes required. So very little training, if any, required for those patients. It's just, again, you click the join link from the same place you've always joined your virtual visits from, and you're loaded into that experience. Just like the bookings-based virtual visits, there's no app download or Microsoft sign-in required. It's the same in-browser-based experience that we just demoed for you. So I just wanted to call that out. Same thing, again, you get access to the virtual lobby before joining that appointments. And once you actually join into the meeting, you do have the ability to add family members or other loved ones or people you want to pull into that virtual visit from your web-based join. For providers, they launch those virtual visits from their existing provider apps. So if you have providers that are already spending a lot of time in Hyperspace or Haiku, I think Kanto also is another example. Those are, I think, all Epic examples, but those are common areas for providers to spend a lot of time in, right? This allows them to join those visits from the familiarity of those provider apps. They can also join from their Teams client or through the Bookings app if they like as well. Their calendars, I should say, in Teams, but it also allows for that integration through provider apps. And then, just like any Teams meeting, it lets them add other providers or specialists, other support personnel, really anyone they like to that virtual visit during the meeting. So that's the EHR connector today. I wanted to give you a sneak peek into an upcoming feature that we've been working to release. And that is the ability to send and receive messages to the lobby, to that waiting room from this queue view that you see here. So this probably looks familiar at this point. It's much like the bookings-based experience that we showed you just a second ago, but with the addition of this waiting room chat section here on the right. So the example I usually go with here is if you had a patient who joined into their virtual visits and the provider is running late for whatever reason, never happens, right? Then you might want to let them know that the provider is running behind and that, it's okay, you're in the right place, everything's fine. And so this is a great way to do that, right? So if you log into this queue view here, you'll be able to send messages from this portal and receive messages in response from the patients who receive those in the waiting room. So this is the, typically the scheduler's view here. Most of the time at scale, if you have an EHR, you're going to have someone who works in the scheduling role. And so it would be their job to sit and kind of watch this, make sure that they're keeping track of all the different statuses for each of these appointments, and then message each patient who's actually waiting and let them know what's going on, right? And this is the lobby chat from the patient's perspective. So on the left, you can see the ability for the patient to initiate a chat to the care team, and that would result in that chat being sent to anyone who has access to that queue view I just showed you on that previous slide. And then from there, of course, the support staff or even the provider themselves, if they wanted, could reply directly. And then on the right, you actually see the patient receiving that chat message. So in our previous example, again, of a provider or scheduler notifying them that the provider is running behind, this here is where they would receive that notification of the incoming chats and view the associated information. So coming soon to an EHR connector near you. Hopefully that one is exciting. It's exciting to me. I know that's been a big ask from a lot of our healthcare customers. So it's super cool to see that we're delivering that. Last but not least, if for whatever reason, you can't use the EHR connector, don't want to use the EHR connector, and bookings isn't appropriate for you, then we have our new virtual appointments API. So maybe you've invested in building existing client portals, or perhaps you've built your own customer-facing app that patients are using to schedule and join their virtual visits. And this can be a great option that lets you continue leveraging those investments while using Teams under the hood to power the virtual visits. So of course, you've been able to set up Teams meetings using Graph for quite some time. As I said at the beginning of my section, the major benefit that comes with using the virtual appointments API specifically is that it lets you create a patient-facing link to join the meeting. So that link gives you, the patient, the same web-based experience that we've demoed for you here today. So there's, again, no need for the patient to authenticate, download the Teams client, or even realize that the visit's being powered by Teams to begin with. So a couple features to call out here. Right now, as of August 2022, we support both browser join and that waiting room feature that I showed you from before. So basically the same experience, very, very similar to what we demoed for bookings. And as I said, same thing you get for EHR. It's now available through Graph, through this virtual appointments API. Coming soon, upcoming roadmap items, we are working on adding a customized waiting room. So if you wanted to brand that yourself, you'd be able to do that. We're working on adding meeting state information. So if you think back to that queue view showing the status of your meeting, same information. The difference here is that you'd be able to use the API to get the state of the meeting. So somebody's waiting, right? Patient's waiting in the meeting, or the meeting has finished or whatnot, and then funnel that into whatever custom queue view you like. So you can build that view yourself. Whereas both bookings and the EHR connectors queue view are built by Microsoft and only available, from within the Teams or bookings apps. We're also adding a short URL. So as you probably noticed in that text message I showed you briefly, the current join URLs for all of these options are very long. So we are working on adding a shorter option there. And then general availability. So we are in public preview today. You are more than welcome to utilize this right now. It's on the beta branch of Graph, but in the near future, it will be moving into GA. So it will get moved over to Graph 1.0.